Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about eyeshadow palettes, and specifically we are going to be focusing mainly on the brand new Naked Reloaded palette from Urban Decay, but in a little different way than I have done in the past. So I am going to go through and give you some swatches. I am going to do a demo, but in the demo you're going to be seeing one eye using the Naked palette and the other eye using the Anastasia Sultry palette. So if you're curious what all of that is about and you want to see some swatches and hear my thoughts on the new Naked palette, then just keep on watching. So a little over a week ago, my best friend said, "Did you see Urban Decay has come out with a new Naked palette?" And I said, "What?" And I immediately went online, looked for some pictures, and I didn't see any swatches, but I did see pictures of the actual palette itself. And I thought, oh my goodness, I love it. The outer cover is beautiful. It has gold lettering. And it's really hard to tell, but this is different than their Naked Cherry palette and many of their previous ones. They have gone back to a fabric, but this is a much better fabric than the velvet of the original, because this one at least is not going to get dirty. It does have a full-length mirror and 12 shadows, but you will notice something missing. There is no tray there for the free brush that has been included in all of the Naked palettes thus far. So there's one thing missing from this palette. Also, you might notice that there are some pan size differences. So the pan sizes from these two outer ones are bigger, and there is more shadow in those two colors. And then these two pans look slightly smaller, but still bigger than the rest of these 8. Now here's the funny thing. These two shades are not the two that they say have slightly more product. It's this one and this bright orange one. So I don't know if that was a mistake from Urban Decay or if they did actually fill this pan with more shadow than they filled in this one. But regardless, that's what it says. So you're getting 12 shadows, but 8 of them are 1.1 grams. I have my notes here. 2 of them, which Urban Decay says are this shade and this shade, are 1.3 grams, and then these 2 end shades are 1.4 grams. So total, you are getting 14.2 grams. You might be wondering why I'm going into all this size comparison. Well, we are looking at this as the new Naked palette. So going back to the old classic Naked palette, they were all the same size pans. We had 12 shades, and those totaled 15.6 grams. So slightly more shadow, and you did get a dual-ended brush. But the good news is Urban Decay did lower the price. So the price of this one is $44. So previous ones, the Naked palettes had gotten up to $54, but their recent release of the Cherry was back down to $49. So I appreciate that Urban Decay is kind of playing with their pricing, trying to bring it back down within reason. So all of that being said, when I got it, I was excited because it looks beautiful. The shade range looks beautiful. But even when I saw the colors online, I immediately texted my best friend and I said, "That looks a lot like the Anastasia Sultry palette." Now, she had come out to visit me in February. We had gone on a shopping spree because we had both been on a no-buy makeup of January. And I picked up this palette. She did as well. And when I saw the pictures of the Naked Reloaded palette, I thought, those really remind me of the Sultry palette. Of course, it was because of this bright shade here initially that grabbed my attention in both palettes. But once I got my Naked palette in the mail, I put them side by side and was pretty surprised to see how similar these palettes looked. Now, sometimes looks can be deceiving, so I started swatching colors, and now we're going to get into swatches. So first I'm going to show you swatches of just the Naked palette itself. Okay, so here are the swatches, and we are going to hope that some of these lighter shades show up. So here from the bottom is Bribe, Barely Baked, Angelfire, and Retro. Next row is Reputation, Burn, Endgame, and Dreamweaver. And I'll talk more about this shade in a minute, but this one is a really difficult shade. It looks very silvery in the pan, but when you apply it, kind of all that silver shimmer kind of goes away. So, and then the final row here, we've got Distilled, Bucked, Boundaries, and Blur, which you can hardly see because it pretty much matches my skin tone. So that's 6 mattes and 6 shimmers. I would say Angelfire and Barely Baked, these 2 shades are probably the most shimmery of the bunch, more metallic-y shimmery. These 3, let's see, right here, these have a decent amount when you swatch them on your hand, but applying them on the eyes, you're gonna get a little more of a muted, subtle shimmer. So they don't come across as metallic as I think a lot of us have gotten used to. So if you're not into super metallic-y shades, you might actually really enjoy kind of that pulled back formula of these. Now they're very pigmented, so don't get me wrong with that. But this is the shade Dreamweaver, that it looks very, very silvery and kind of like it's going to be a cool color. And I don't know, I'm not quite sure. It's just not one of my favorites in the palette. So it kind of just comes off as a dirty brown color. So that would be probably my least favorite shade in the palette, but all of the rest, I think the shade range is really nice. But now let's talk about how they compare to the Sultry palette. So in comparison, I was able to find 5 basically exact duplicate colors. Then there are 2 more shades in these palettes that are very close. And then overall, just I think when you put these 2 side by side, you're going to get very similar looks. So in my opinion, which one is better? Well, in a moment, I am gonna do a demo. And so I have done one eye in each of these palettes, and just showing you these shadows side by side and how you can pretty much not distinguish a difference between the shades that I used on my lids. As far as performance goes though, if you love more metallic, shimmery quality of your shadows, then you are gonna like the Sultry palette much more than the Reloaded palette. And you also get 2 more shades. Now, as far as the grams, the amount of shadows, you actually are getting a little bit more shadow in this palette than this, even though there are more colors. Crazy, I know. So this one, you're getting 11.62 grams. So each one of these pans is only 0.83 grams. So you are getting slightly less product. This one is 45, this one's 44. This one does come with a dual-ended brush, but you do get 14 shades. And for me personally, I rarely use a whole shadow up in a palette, so I usually like to have maybe 2 more shades rather than a little more of that actual product, but that's just my personal preference. I think the last time that Urban Decay did a matte black in their Naked palette, it was Naked 2. So we've had a lot of Naked palettes in between where they have not included a matte black shade. And I was kind of surprised that they did not put that in here, especially because we've got two shades that are so similar. This one obviously is slightly lighter than this one, but I just kind of feel like there's some overlap that they could have changed out a couple of those shades and given us a black. And then I just would have liked maybe a little something different other than this shade, something with more of a metallic-y shimmer, shine. If they wanted to have some more silver, I love what Anastasia did in this shade. I'm usually not a bright silver kind of girl, but this shade is so beautiful. It is like almost, it has like a lavender shift to it. It's beautiful. So for me personally, I find that I think I'm going to be reaching more for the Sultry palette on its own than the Urban Decay Naked Reloaded. Now, I did pull in a different shadow from another palette yesterday when I used this and combined it with the rest of the colors in here, and I really liked that. So I think it is one that is going to be a great companion palette for other things. All right, let's go ahead now and jump into the demo, and you can see me apply shadows from both of these palettes. I've started off with primer on both eyelids. I used the Smashbox 24-hour Photo Finish Shadow Primer. I'm going to start on my left side with the Naked Reloaded palette, and I'm going to go in with this shade right here at the top, and I'm going to use different brushes on each eye so that there's no confusion between the two. I'm going to use the Morphe 208 and the shade Bribe as my brow bone highlight. And I'm going to layer this twice. On my right eye from the Sultry palette, I'm going to use the shade Fresh, and I'm going to use the Morphe M524. Similar brushes, brush shape and size, just a different type of bristle, but I think they perform pretty much the same. So you can see that shade looks identical on both eyes. Now in the crease, I'm going to first start with the shade Bucked from the Reloaded palette and Birch from the Sultry palette, and then I'm going to dust just a little bit of Twig, there it is, this slightly cooler tone shadow, because you'll see Birch is just slightly warmer than Bucked, but it's still very similar. And I'm going to use the Morphe M504 for both eyes. I have two of these brushes, so we're not going to be having any cross-contamination of colors, don't worry. Trying to keep this experiment on track here. Now the Anastasia shadows are softer and a little bit more powdery, so that is one thing to note, but they are very pigmented. And so there is just the Birch shade. You can see it's just slightly warmer, so I'm going to go in with just a little Twig over the top of that. Then around the edge of that, I'm now going to go in with one of my favorite shades in both palettes, and it is the shade Bloom in the Sultry palette and Retro in the Naked Reloaded palette. So let's start with the Anastasia one, and again, still on that M504. This one in the Sultry palette is a lot more pigmented, so you really just need a light tap to get a good amount of color on your brush. I'm using a different brush, the 504 for the naked side. Here we go. It's a little easier to control the color on the naked side because it's not quite as instant pigment. I mean, it's pigmented, but just keep that in mind between the two palettes. Now to darken the outer corner, I'm going to go in with the dark brown in both palettes. In the Sultry palette, it's Dystopian, and I'm going to use the E17 from Morphe. And then in the Naked palette, it is this shade right here, which is Endgame. And I'm going to use this, I think it's Crown. It's a 282 eye fluff brush. So we're gonna start with Reloaded and Endgame. And I'm just gonna darken the outer corner with this. And I don't want to take this through the crease. I am just going to create this little bit of a wedge shape here in the outer corner. And then I'm going to take the Sigma E25. I have both the travel size and the regular size. So on the Sultry side, I'm going to use the travel size brush, and I'm just going to go in with a dry brush and just soften the edge of that dark shadow. Do the same thing over here. The Morphe M433 is almost identical to this brush. I just didn't have too clean at the moment, so we're going with this brush. And now I'm going to go into the crease and just deepen that a little bit with some of the Bloom shade, and then a little more of Birch and Twig in the Sultry side. And then on the Reloaded side, we're going to go back in with Retro and then a little bit of Bucked again. So starting here first, I'm going to start in first now with Bloom, because I want to keep this a little brighter, not get too muddy looking out here. And then a little dip into Birch and Twig. On the lid, we're going to add some shimmer. I'm going to start off with Ember in the Sultry palette and Distilled in the Urban Decay Reloaded palette. And for both, I'm going to use the Sigma E60, just a flat shader brush. We'll start with the Urban Decay side. And I'm just going to use these dry to start off with. And I'm going to use this on the kind of center of the eye, blend it out towards the corner. You can see it's just a nice kind of wash of a hint of a little bit of shimmer, no glitter particles. And now on the Sultry side, let's see how this looks. On the inner corner, I'm going to go in with Angelfire. Where is it? Right there. This is one of my favorite shades in both palettes, this kind of pearly, shimmery shade. So in this one, it is Pearl. And I'm going to use my finger, actually just my pinky here. I'm going to put this on the inner corner and tap this over to overlap that shade that we have there in the center. Wiped off my pinky really well, and now we'll go in with Angelfire. And here is where I think there are big differences. The shimmers in the Urban Decay palette just do not seem to have the same sparkle and grip that we have in the Sultry palette. We're getting there, but I think it takes just a little more work to get there. So I'm going to actually switch hands here so you can see. And this shade, in the Urban Decay palette has a little more pink than the Anastasia palette does, but and then to just make the colors a little more equal, I'm going to go in with just a hint of this rose quartz shade. See if we can kind of make those shades match a little bit more closely. The lower lash line for both eyes, I'm going to just use a little bit of Whiskey by Urban Decay. It's just a nice kind of medium to dark brown, matte brown liner. And then over the top of that liner from this palette, I'll do a little bit of the dark brown, and then I think I'll do a little bit of the Bloom and Birch shade as we get in closer towards the inner corner. On the Urban Decay side, we're going to do the same thing with Endgame, Retro, and Bucked. And then I think I want to just change up this center shade just a little bit. And so I'm going to use a combination of Rose Quartz and Cinder in the Sultry palette. So let's go in first with a little Rose Quartz here. And then a little bit of Cinder, I think. No, that we need too much of that. There we go. And then on the Urban Decay side, clean off my finger really well. I'm going to do a little bit of, I think, Reputation and a tiny little bit maybe of Barely Naked. Let's just see what we can do here to get close to the same look. Same color, I should say. I'm going to apply liquid liner to both eyes. I'm going to use the Kat Von D tattoo liner in Mad Max Brown. And then I'll clean up under the eyes, apply mascara, and we'll be right back. All right, here is our finished look. I did go back and add a little more inner corner highlight from each palette, but overall, I think from at least a distance, even up close, I hardly can tell the difference between the shades of the two. All right, guys, so that wraps up this video. I hope that that was helpful for you. For those of you that are seeing pictures of the new Naked palette and wondering if it needs to become part of your collection, hopefully I gave you enough information that you can make an informed decision and decide. Also, if you already own the Sultry palette, it hopefully will help you decide whether you really need both. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye.